Hi everyone. Okay, today we're doing a watercolor tutorial and it's going to be a poppy flower with the seed pods. And one of the things I like about poppies is that the seed pods, when you do both botanical art, it's nice to have the seed pods to help identify what the flower is. And I'm just using some colored pencils, and these are even Crayola children's pencils, so nothing too fancy, but you could use pencil, pens. The nice thing about the flowers is that they are very kind of playful, and it's not like a portrait of a face where you have to have every detail exactly right, or it'll turn out like a Picasso with the flowers. It's still going to look like a flower no matter how you curve the stem, etc. So here I'm going ahead and putting the seed pods, and I have an open poppy and a closed upright poppy. So we're going to paint those with the pink. And I'm sorry I don't have the names of the watercolors I'm using. You might be able to identify them here. I can't really see right now what those colors are. But I have some pinks, and then I'm using a yellow, a cadmium yellow, I know that for sure, and I think phthalo blue for the greens. So I mix those for the greens, and then I'm also going to use for the center of the poppy a dark purple mixed with some black, and I think it's just a ivory black, but I'm not sure. And I mixed the pinks with my phthalo blue actually to get the purple color, and that'll be down the road. So we're just going to use some round brushes, and I apologize, I don't even know the size of these. Okay, so this is just a piece of washi tape, and what I'm doing now is putting it under my paper so that you can have a slant, and that will help your water colors flow. If your paper's just flat, then you're not going to get that flow. It's just going to puddle there, which maybe, you can try that if you want and see the difference. You also don't want necessarily your paper to be too slanted, or the paint's going to drip too fast, unless you want that to, it just depends. It's experimental, but you're going to maybe have your paint not stay, but literally just run down the paper. So I just put it up about a ½ inch on the top side of the paper. And this is a water block paper, so it comes with the edges glued down, and then there's like a little opening where you can go in with, I use a, what's it called? It's like a bone, it's for bookbinding. It's called it helps you put creases in like cards and stuff. It's made of ivory or faux ivory, but you could use like a palette knife, or even a butter knife even, to separate after it's completely dry. So the glued edges just keep it flat so that the paper doesn't warp and ripple, because if it were just loose paper, then it would do that. All right, and if you don't have these watercolor blocks, this one's by Arches, then you could use watercolor paper, preferably that you've pre-soaked and then taped down and let dry. Tape down to a watercolor board, like a maple plywood board. If you don't have a watercolor board, maple plywood's really good at absorbing that water. Okay, so I'm working on, as you can see the difference, I have more yellow in the seed pods, and then I put more green or blue in the leaves down on the bottom. And the nice thing about mixing your own greens versus a pre-mixed green is the ability to adjust the warmth and coolness of the green. All right, here we go for part 2. I let that dry. So I didn't want to do any of the middle, because although it sometimes works out when you have the darks that I'm going to put in this middle bleed a little bit into the petals, I wanted to create a more distinct center. And as you can see, it's kind of splashing, but I don't care if there's a little bit of splattering. To me, with watercolor, it just kind of shows that you're painting in watercolor. It's like, okay, this is a watercolor painting. It's dripping a little, And so I'm only going to do 3 layers with this painting, and that's so that I can give time for certain areas to dry so that the paints aren't bleeding into each other, and I can have that definition. But if you were painting in hyperrealism, you would want to, or in a lot of layers, you'd probably even do a lot more layers and a lot finer details. But we're just doing like a very loose painting, and I actually like the purity of doing the least amount of layers possible, so you can just really see those colors, and you can see how some of on the bottom poppy, how it's kind of dried and left its own edge, which is kind of like a feathery tint in the flower. And so those are the kinds of things I really like about the watercolor paint. It kind of takes on a life of its own. And now I'm going in to do some of the darker purple for the center of the open flower. So I'm starting with my larger round brush, and then I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. And okay, I think right now I'm actually adding a little more color to the seed pods. They just were a little anemic, I guess. So here, I think I'm gonna mix, like I said, I'm gonna mix the pinks with the, oh, you know what? I actually have a separate purple here from this palette, and I'm gonna mix it with blacks to make the dark purple. So I'm not sure, this is a pre-mixed purple, and so I'm not sure what the actual color is. And I did let it dry because I wanted that definition of the center. But again, you could do wet into wet and have a very loose center that's kind of blending with the petals. It just depends on the look you want. And I'm using now my smaller round brush for definition. I don't use a flat brush in this painting because they're floral, flowy flowers from nature, and the flat brush would have too many sharp, harsh lines, and that's just wouldn't be part of the nature of this painting. Now I like to keep the background plain white, especially with these really colorful paintings. But there are watercolor artists, and I have also in the past painted the whole background like a green or a black. I haven't had very much luck with black. I'm still experimenting and getting a really dark black, because most of the blacks I'm using with watercolor seem to dry like a grayish color and a medium value and not a true black. So if anyone has any tips for that, I'd love to hear them, because I haven't been able to find any good watercolor blacks, and I'm wondering if people are using a black ink instead to get those really dark blacks, especially when they do the background in a solid black. All right, so I'm just finishing up here the petals, and I think we're almost done. I'm not even going to sign it on the video. But I hope you enjoyed the little tutorial, and I'll try to do more with some more technical details coming up. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments.